Movie night with the girls is a blast no matter what, but sometimes we like to level up our experience and make it more memorable.
Streaming at home is routine, but going to the movies with my friends is an event.
Watching a film on the big screen with surround sound is so immersive and exciting.
And you can't beat those cushy reclining chairs.
And now that I joined the Regal Crown Club, I earn points every time I buy a ticket or concessions.
As soon as she told me Regal has a free loyalty rewards program, I joined too.
I can use my points for concession upgrades, movie tickets, and merch.
I like using my points to enter sweepstakes for exclusive prizes.
On Mondays, I get 25% off candy.
And Tuesdays are Regal Value Days, half off popcorn and tickets as low as $5.
Plus, Regal adds a free popcorn to my account every year for my birthday.
After my 6th visit, I got bonus points.
You've only gone 6 times? I've gone 10 times, and I got even more bonus points.
Wait, you went to the movies without me?
Yeah.
Whether you're making a delicious family meal or a post-workout snack, choose the farm-fresh taste of Eggland's best eggs. Only Eggland's best hens are fed their proprietary all-vegetarian feed. That's what makes their eggs more nutritious. With 10 times more vitamin E, 25% less saturated fat, and 6 times more vitamin D compared to ordinary eggs. Eggland's best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs. Visit egglandsbest.com to learn more.
Hey everyone, Chris DeMakes, a podcast producer, Chris Fafalios here. You've probably heard me talk quite a bit about One Hit Thunder, which is the show that I host. And today we're sharing an exciting episode with you right here on the Chris DeMakes, a podcast feed. Just yesterday, we kicked off the THUNDRED, a 5-part series where we're counting down our list of the 100 greatest albums of all time. A list that we compiled with data from over 100 people, both inside and outside of the music industry. We'll be releasing a new episode of this series every Friday, so be sure to tune in. Regular episodes of One Hit Thunder still drop every Wednesday, and I'd love for you to subscribe to the show, so go do that, please. In the meantime, enjoy this episode right here in which we discuss albums 100 through 81. And don't be shy. Let me know what you think of the list so far. You can join the conversation in either the Chris DeMakes a Podcast or the One Hit Thunder Facebook group, where you'll find a fun, friendly community of music fans. Enjoy the episode.
One hit is all you need to make the money guaranteed, and you can live off royalties forever. And it makes me wonder, is it just a wonder, or is it one hit thunder?
The THUNDRED. All right, Matt, here we are. It's the THUNDRED. I just let you know today that we're going to call this the THUNDRED, the One Hit Thunder Top 100 Albums of All Time. This is a data-based list, and man, am I excited.
I am very excited about this. So one of the things that I told you, and I am assuming you did the same thing, was that when we did our Apple 100 albums list, we got a little bit of negative feedback for not being familiar with every single song on that list. But we were also doing like a pseudo blind reaction. So since this is one that we've organized, I had recommended it to Chris, like, if there's an album that you're not familiar with, let's like make sure that we listen to it to familiarize ourselves a little bit. And then I want to be as like surprised as possible. So I just gave Chris the assignment of, if you even question that I might not know it, send me just the albums that you think I may not have heard, and we'll do it that way. So there are 7 albums that I know are somewhere in this collection of 20 with no real clue of where in the list. So I'm excited to go into this as blind could be.
So here's the deal. Over the past couple months, I collected data from over 100 people, and I tried to make it people from different places, people of different backgrounds, men, women, everybody. You know, like, not just make it like middle-aged white guys who play in punk bands. It's not that. But it is people who play music, people who don't play music, people from the music industry, people in bands, solo artists, all kinds of different people. Submitted a list knowing that you rank your list of top albums of all time from 1 to 20, and then from there it was just math. If you put an album at number 1, it would get 20 points, down to whatever you put at number 20 would get 1 point. So I don't know if this is the best way to do this. I decided to do it this way. I guess the issue with this could be that like an album that nobody puts at number 1, but everybody puts somewhere could theoretically be number 1 overall. Like maybe that's the issue with this, but I don't really care. I think this is a pretty cool way to do it. And another thing I'll say about it is that since I got so many people's lists, there are no albums on this list that are one person gave it 20 points and now it's on the list. It had to be a good bit above 20 points to even get to number 100. So I like that too.
Yeah.
Every album you hear was on multiple lists.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So like I said, you sent me 7 albums that you thought I may or may not have heard, one of which made me laugh because I'm pretty sure it was actually on my list of 20 albums.
Okay.
But were there any albums that you had to listen to for the first time in preparation for this?
Yes.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So we got to experience some new stuff. I'm ready for this.
The THUNDRED officially begins now. And today we're doing 100 up through 81. We're going to do 20 albums.
And we'll just drop these, I think, every Friday morning / early afternoon. You should get the next edition of this till we get to the top 20.
I'm the only one who knows what this whole list is now. And I've seen the Apple Music list, obviously, and I've seen Rolling Stone lists. They usually do 500, but we're doing 100. I think ours is the coolest one I've ever seen. Just saying.
Yes.
Just saying.
That's all I want.
Starting at number 100, The Cranberries. Everybody else is doing it, so why can't we?
Now, this is the debut from them, correct?
That is right.
Okay, so you're getting what I think are among 2 of their best songs, definitely among their 2 best singles. You're getting Linger and you're getting Dreams on a single album.
That's right. I like that this made the list. For Linger and Dreams alone, now I had to listen to the rest of the whole album, and I do think those are the standout tracks. But yeah, this is the debut and what put the Cranberries on the map, and I love that this made the list. You know, it started with College Buzz on this album. I still remember the first time I saw the music video for Linger. Loved it. And yeah, I love that we can represent the late, great Dolores O'Riordan on this list. I think this is pretty cool.
Already off to a great start. I'm so excited for this. All right. I mean, not much to say beyond, like, it's a good album. Definitely the singles are the standouts. I agree with you, like, as someone who owns this album, it's a really good album, but, like, they had the right 2 singles to choose from.
Absolutely. At number 99, now, this is a double album, Matt. We got Outkast, Speaker Box, The Love Below.
Not my favorite Outkast, so I'm hoping that there's more Outkast on this list. I've always been more of a Stankonia fan myself, but I mean, we're talking about Hey Ya, we're talking about The Way You Move, we're talking about Roses, like we're talking about some pretty big hits. Also, some really, really good deep cuts on these tracks. My question for you. I mean, infamously, what this album is the sound of a duo breaking up, basically.
Yeah.
They couldn't collaborate together, so they just both did solo albums. You had Big Boy doing Speaker Box, and then you had Andre 3000 doing The Love Below. Do you have an album that you think is the better? Of those 2 albums, is there one that you lean more to out of the double album?
I mean, The Love Below for sure for me.
The Love Below's really, really good.
Yeah, The Love Below. I mean, I do love The Way You Move. I do love The Way You Move, Matt. But The Love Below is awesome. I mean, Hey Ya Alone, which I never realized was inspired by the Ramones and the Smiths. Did you know that?
You know, I didn't, but that doesn't shock me when I think about it.
Yeah. And The Love Below is all live band, whereas Speaker Box is all drum machine. But, dude, come on now. I know that you like Stankonia more. You probably like Atlians or however you say that one. Like,
yeah.
But this is the one, man.
Well, but so here's my reason why I don't like this one as much, is that Outkast was always one of those interesting duos because Big Boy and Andre 3000's flows are so different.
Yeah.
So like having them trading verses on a singular track to me is such a large appeal of Outkast that you don't get any of that across like almost 42 tracks. So it's like that always kind of knocks it down a couple notches. But I agree with you. Love Below is kind of the standout here. Beyond the two big singles, like his cover of My Favorite Things is so interesting. The A Life in the Day of Benjamin Andre Incomplete, the closing track, is fucking awesome. So yeah, I mean, this is not me saying this is a bad album. This should be on a top 100 list.
Yeah.
I was just hoping that there's another Outkast out there somewhere, maybe.
There's some deep cuts on here I love too. I love that Pink and Blue song on The Love Below. I mean, I like that it's on the list. It wasn't on my list. Neither of these albums so far were on my 20. I should note that Matt and I all we got to do was contribute one list each. We got to contribute our 20. Those stats are in there. For a second, Matt, I thought about hitting you up and going, well, maybe you and I should get 40 since we host the shows and get to have like more points. But I was like, no, we are just two contributors to this list.
I think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, let's make note if an album was in one of our personal top 20s. So far, I don't think either album was in either of our top 20s.
That's true so far.
Moving on. Number 98, Ween, Chocolate and Cheese.
Mister, would you please help my buddy? He's down and he ain't getting up. He coughed up snot in the driveway, and I think his lungs fucked up.
So you're the bigger Ween guy between the two of us.
Yeah.
I do love Ween. I don't know if this is my favorite Ween album, so I'm curious if this is your favorite Ween album.
It's also not my favorite Ween album, but I love that this album is on the list. Like, it's definitely a top 3 Ween album for me. I probably would have had the Mollusk the highest on my list, but dude, this is such a wild and crazy album. I know at least one person who submitted a list put this at number 1.
Wow.
And I was like, when I got that list, I was like, whoa, number 1, Chocolate and Cheese. So that probably helped with it being on a couple other lists, helped it get into the top 100. But I ain't mad at it. I mean, this album has Spinal Meningitis Got Me Down on it. Do you know that song?
I do know that song. In fact, that song has been referenced on Horror Movie Night before, is Scott saying it's definitely a song that has not aged beautifully over the years.
It is one of the scariest songs I've ever heard in my life. But also it has amazing songs. It has Voodoo Lady in it. It has Freedom of 76, which I watched Ween play. You can go on YouTube and watch them play it on like a Lifetime talk show. Dude, so many good songs. The HIV song, What Diener Was Talking About, is probably my favorite song on the album. I absolutely love this song. Mr. Would You Please Help My Pony is on this album. When I look at the track listing on this album, maybe this is my favorite Ween album. I don't know. I gotta think about it. But stylistically, this is all over the place. It has one of the most memorable album covers of all time, I would say.
That's for sure. Here, I'm spitting this out there right now. One of these days on Geekscape TV, I'm going to make you and Bacon join forces to do the ultimate ranking of Ween albums.
Oh, dude.
As a video.
I would love to do that. And I am totally cool with this album being on here. If you have never heard this album is a real experience. And you got to be in the right state of mind for it. But man, is it a fun time.
All right, next one.
Moving on. So far, none of these albums have been on either of our lists. Number 97, Piebald, We Are the Only Friends That We Have.
Hey, you're part of it. Yeah, you're part of it. Hey, you're part of it. Yeah.
This was on my list for sure. This was number 19 out of my 20.
Okay.
I love this album.
Yeah.
This is one of those albums where, I mean, I don't think that there's a bad track on it. I do think it's a top-heavy album for sure. Those first, 4 tracks, one after another, King of the Road, into Just a Simple Plan, into American Hearts, into Long Nights, is just I think every band dreams of having 4 tracks in a row that insanely good.
Yeah.
One after another. But you still get songs like Monkey and Robot. So fun fact about this album, something I connect with this album, honestly. I remember leaving work one day, and I had about a 35 to 40 minute drive home from work back in the day, and just having the worst day. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And when you just have one of those days where you just need to yell. And I put this record on and I screamed along to every single song, and goddamn did it make me feel better when I when I finally pulled into my driveway, because it is just there's something euphoric with every shout that appears in this record.
This came out in 2002, and this was at a time where this world of indie, or what people would call emo at the time, was just so many good albums were being released that I think this album, I would sort of not forget about it, but sometimes be oh yeah, this is one of the best. This was a regular listen in our van on tour, and looking back, this is such a standout album. It wasn't in my personal top 20, but I don't fault anyone who puts it in theirs. This is an amazing album. And like you said, Matt, that first, I even go further than the past 4. That Fear and Loathing on Cape Cod is number 5. Then Monkey vs. the Robot is 6. I think it keeps going. And yeah, the front half is better than the back half, but wow, it's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. And then, yeah, the back half isn't bad, but it's actually, I honestly think it's just that Sex Sells and Unfortunately I'm Buying is not the strongest closer to the record, but Look, I Just Don't Like You, and It's Gonna Get Worse Before It Gets Better are still banger tracks. Yeah, I agree with you. Fear and Loathing, Cape Cod, Monkey vs. Robot, even Karate Chops for Everybody But Us. The first 6 or 7 songs just have such an energy to it that it would be impossible for any band to keep that energy for 12 straight tracks.
Yeah. And American Hearts is for the scene of music or whatever that we're involved in, that's one of the all-timers as far as a track. So
I remember watching a video of them playing this album for a reunion show, and they did something that I thought was very funny, which was that they played King of the Road, Just a Simple Plan, and then they said, all right, we're all going to just pretend that we played the song that's here.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get to it later in the night. And then they just went right into Long Nights and then end it with American Hearts, because how do you not end with American? It's just such a perfect show closing track.
Yeah. Hey, man, you're part of it. And Matt, we're moving to number 96. And I don't remember your list, but I feel like this could have maybe been on it. At number 96, Green Day, Insomniac.
I don't think Green Day Insomniac was on my list. If we had done 30, it would have been. This took me hours. I ended up with a list of 45 albums, and picking what would go in the top 20 was literally killing my babies. But this is my favorite Green Day record. This album is just pure adrenaline for 14 tracks. The story behind this was that when they put out Dookie, all of the people on Gilman Street kind of called them sellouts, kicked them out, made fun of them for not being a punk band, but being a pop band. And they came back and wrote the most punk sounding record Green Day's ever released. This is an 80s hardcore album almost, with how fast and angry and frenetic all of the songs are, while still managing to have the pop hooks that Billy Joe Armstrong is so good at doing. And I think with the exception of Brain Stew and maybe one other song, the average length of every track is like 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Like, this is so fast and angry and quick, but it just works. It works in a way that doesn't make sense. People were not ready for it when it came out at the time, but I feel like this is one of those big revisionist albums now where people who have been like diehard Green Day fans from day one and never look back, this is usually their like go-to for the low-key best record they've ever put out.
I don't think it's the best record, but it's definitely awesome. They must have really taken people calling them sellouts to heart, because not only did they release this album, they also then, after this album came out, they did a tour of like smaller venues.
Yep.
And for anyone who doesn't realize, this is the album that the hits from this album are like Geek Stink Breath, Brain Stew / Jaded. They kind of combined that into one music video on MTV at the time. My favorite song on this album is 86.
86 is a good one. My favorite one is Stewart in the Avenue.
Great
I think
song.
that song is an amazing track. Even like Babs Uvula, who,
Yeah.
fucking awesome song. Like, there's just, it's great. All right, 95.
At number 95, The Streets, original pirate material.
Couldn't see past the end of my beer, what was getting near, or the silence after the cheers. I didn't know that it was over till it was too late. But if I ever needed you, would you be there?
Fuck yes. I know that this was on my list. Was this on your list?
This was not on my list. This is probably my third or fourth favorite Streets album, and I still love it. But this was the debut. I mean, I guess it makes sense that the debut. I was shocked that this album made it, because the Streets are, I mean, you either love the Streets or you hate the Streets. There's not a lot of people that are in the middle on it because it's so different and weird.
Yeah.
That song, It's Too Late. For anyone who hasn't heard that song, it tells this very emotional story about how he was never treated his girlfriend right, and it's just this story. He's always late, always showing up late, and then it's too late by the end. And it just has this like beautiful sample over it. I remember it had to be around 2004, 2005, being really upset over a breakup and being on a plane home from a tour in Japan, sitting with my headphones on, with my head against the plane window, staring out, listening to It's Too Late and being really sad. And I'm just like, such a beautiful song, and it just takes me back. And, you know, sad, happy, whatever, all memories kind of become the same. And I just think of that as like a beautiful moment.
Yeah. So I just checked my list. I put this at 6 on the list that I sent you.
Okay.
This is my favorite Streets album, then closely followed by Everything Is Borrowed.
Love that album.
Which I think is another just phenomenal album. I think what I love about the Streets original pirate material is similar to what I love about an album that I'm assuming will be on this top 100, which is the first Wu-Tang album, which is that there's such rawness to this particular recording.
Yeah.
The cover of the album is just the apartment complex that Mike Skinner was living in when he produced this in his bedroom. And I think that it feels like a record produced in someone's bedroom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it feels like someone working out how to make this type of music. And what I always loved about it was like the Streets definitely became a concept album band, much more in your face. You know, when they get to their second album, it's literally a story that's being told to you through the tracks. But this one feels like a concept album in the sense of like, I listened to this album, and even though I've never been to London, I feel like I can just perfectly envision like a rainy, grimy day in London.
Dude, I've experienced this album in London on a rainy day. I have.
Yeah.
I got real into the Streets and Lily Allen at the same time on a tour in England. And
yes, that makes sense.
And it feels like an album that a guy made on his laptop because he did.
The two songs that always have been like the standouts for me on this one are towards the end, which is The Weak Become Heroes and Stay Positive. There's something about how hypnotic the beats are to both of those songs that just works for me. But my exposure to this was that MTV2 was playing the Let's Push Things Forward music video. And it was literally, I remember the lyric, around here we say birds, not bitches. And just being like, this is so proudly like English in every single way. Like, this isn't an English group trying to be an American group. This is like an English group pridefully being an English group.
Yeah.
That it just charmed the absolute shit out of me.
It's an English guy doing spoken word poetry over weird beats that he makes on his laptop. Sometimes the beats, they almost sound like something's wrong, like a mess up or something. But once you hear it repeated, it becomes charming. I love The Streets. I would say that The Streets is one of my favorite. It's not really a band. It's a guy, but
it's a project for sure.
Huge Mike Skinner fan. So I love that this made the list.
100%.
At number 94, Jellyfish, Spilt Milk.
Mason clutching his crucifix, baptized the baby in whiskey and licorice. What a lovely way, drowning sins in tooth decay. Looks like no hero's gonna fall. The bows are bound to break.
Obviously, we did an episode on Jellyfish. I did a brief little deep dive on there. You guys have done the song New Mistake on Chris DeMakes, and that really sold me on that song. This is the first time I really listened to all of Spilt Milk, and like, man, is this a record that I am sad I haven't been listening to for the last 10, 15 years. This album rules. This is such a good album.
It's an all-timer, man. And it surprisingly didn't make my list, but it definitely made some people close to me's list. And this band should have been the biggest band in the world, maybe, except their timing could not have been worse. Their timing was right when Nirvana was coming, and this was a band that was, I mean, they would say overproduced. Like, just so much production quality to it. It's part Beatles, part Queen. New Mistake is an all-time favorite song of mine, but songs like The Ghost at Number 1 and Joining a Fan Club, I mean, these songs are incredible. If you haven't heard this album, this might be the one of this section of 20 that I would say you got to go listen to that one first.
Yeah. No, I agree.
At number 93, Phoebe Bridgers, Stranger in the Alps.
I have motion sickness. Somebody roll the windows down. There are no words in the English language. I could scream to drown you out.
Phoebe Bridgers is a name I've always heard. I've watched her perform when she's the musical guest on SNL. I've always been into it. Pretty much anytime someone sent me a Phoebe Bridgers track, I've liked it. Today was the first time I really listened to this album. Gotta say, love the name of the album. Love that it's just a reference to the TV edited version of The Big Lebowski. I find that very, very funny. I would actually venture to say, of the albums you sent me that I had not heard before, this was probably the one I was into the least. I still liked it a lot. But this is definitely, I feel like there are certain albums you can put on at any time, anywhere, any place. And there are albums that you need to just be in the mood to listen to it. And this was definitely like, there were points where it's like, all right, I think I'm just going to skip to the next track because there's like 3 minutes left of this 6-minute song, and it is just like not doing it for me right now in this moment. But I want to like go back and actually listen to this album appropriately, like when I'm ready to like put the headphones on and fully just like let it immerse me.
Well, dude, I'm glad that Phoebe is represented on our list. This is one of the more recent albums that made the list. And I think it is an album that will stand the test of time. She's such a great lyricist and one of my favorite new artists in recent years. The first song on this album, Smoke Signals, is the first Phoebe Bridgers song I ever heard when Trevor from Punchline played it to me in the van. We were driving at night and, heard it through a good sound system in the van. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. Matt, you have to experience Smoke Signals driving at night and just take in the lyrics, take in the vibe of the song. It is absolutely incredible. And then the second song on the album, Motion Sickness, is a more upbeat song that you gotta pay attention to the lyrics because it's about Ryan Adams.
Oh.
Dude, some of these lyrics are absolutely incredible and such a takedown of that guy. The lyric that always sticks out to me that you gotta pay attention, it's in the bridge, is "You said when you met me, you were born, but you were in a band when I was born."
Oh.
which is such a crazy, like, my buddy Eric said to me, he's like, "Oh, I thought she said bored." I'm like, "No, you said when you met me, you were born, but you were in a band when I was born." And I'm just like, oh, that is harsh. And just the whole thing is amazing. It's like, why do you sing in an English accent? I guess it's too late to change that now. Like, all these like digs in the song, and it is just, I mean, lyrics aside, it's an amazing song that I probably listen to. I probably hear that song on average every other day of my life. I just absolutely love this album and highly suggest it. I'm glad it's on the list.
I will. I'll dive into this one a little bit deeper.
At number 92, Bon Iver, 22 a Million.
I am familiar with Bon Iver. Multiple times people have sent me Bon Iver songs, and I've pretty much loved everything I've ever heard from Bon Iver, but I've never dove into a full album before. Here's the thing. I was not familiar with this album title the way I'm familiar with other Bon Iver album titles, so it makes me wonder if there's other ones that will show up later on in this list. But I loved listening to this record.
Good.
Like, this was like absolutely my shit. So many good songs. Opening track is incredible. The song God is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's just so many good things that I found on the Bon Iver record. So this may, if not for Jellyfish being on the list that you sent me, this would have been my like favorite discovery of this group of 20.
Well, Matt, I will take credit for this making the list at all. It only made it to number 92, but I will tell you, if I was making the list, it would have been way higher because on my personal list, this was number 2.
Ooh, okay.
For a while, I was calling it my all-time favorite album, but then I realized, this other one is my all-time favorite album. But I've never heard anything like this album. Did you hear the song Creeks, 715 Creeks, which is like the all-vocal, like with the crazy vocoder and stuff? That song, that blew my mind the first time I heard it. Front to back, I just can't believe how amazing this album is. And it's crazy because some of his other stuff that's just like straight up folk, I don't even really like it that much.
Yeah. Well, so my like entry point into Bon Iver was it's going to be a little sad for the next like minute and a half. But it was actually a coworker of mine when my sister was diagnosed with cancer and I was like really stressed out and worried. My coworker had a wife who was also battling breast cancer, and he was like, "Hey, this is the song I listen to whenever I'm stressed out, and it just is very comforting to me." And it was actually on the following album. It was the song Faith on I
love that album too.
That song became like one of my most listened to songs for a couple of years because I just loved it so much. But I've talked about this before. Sometimes you love a song so much you're afraid to like dive into the rest of the catalog because it won't be as good as like what you've built up in your head. So this was like, listening to this album was like, oh no, I have full permission to just dive into this guy's whole deal because I'm just into all of it right now.
Yeah.
So I predict 2025 specifically, this is going to be a big Bon Iver year for Matt Kelly.
Yeah. Justin Vernon. This album is a blend of indie rock, hip hop, avant-garde music. I mean, it got multiple Grammy nominations, critical acclaim. If you don't know this album, it's like a mix of like the past and the future in music, if that makes sense. It's like taking stripped down, beautiful, haunting songs and mixing it with crazy production stuff. I absolutely love this album.
All right. And I am a new lover of this album.
At number 91, Eels, Electroshock Blues.
This much. A town teeming with the unloved. Close the window and lock it so it's good in time. La 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 la.
This was the one I laughed about because you sent this to me on the list of albums you weren't sure if I had heard, and it was my number 2 on my list.
Okay, so you were responsible. Like I was a lot responsible for Bon Iver making the list. That you're very responsible for this one making the list.
So do you know any... Well, first of all, was this an album you had heard prior to this list?
No, I listened to it while running on the treadmill. And then
Not a good treadmill album.
No, not really. But I was like, I know I need to listen, and that's my best time to listen because you're like in a different state of mind. Your whole body is like on 10 at that moment. And I was listening to it, and I'm like, wait, this album, this is like about something. This is like telling a story, right?
Did you research this?
Yes, I did. And I was blown away by what that story was.
Yeah, so the story of this is the Eels blew up with this song Novocaine for the Soul after years of the lead singer of Eels, E, trying to make it as a musician. And at the peak of all of his dreams coming true, his sister commits suicide and his mother gets diagnosed with cancer. Now, keep in mind that this is a kid who already found his father's suicide body during his childhood. So now he's facing the fact that he is the last living part of his entire bloodline. And he writes this album. The opening track is him basically putting his sister's suicide note to music. And it's just him capturing this vibe of spending an entire year sitting in a hospital watching his mother slowly die. But what I loved about this album is that it's so dark, it's so heavy, it's so depressing. But then you end with the last track, P.S. You Rock My Socks, and it ends on this hopeful note. There's a lyric that I think about all the time in that song. It's the last line of the song where he says, I guess now that everyone I know is dead, it's time that I live. And it's like him just accepting that like all of this terrible shit happened to him, but he's still here and he can't just give up. He has to keep pushing forward now. And it's just such a hopeful, like, light at the end of the tunnel after this harrowing experience of going through such a heavy record. This made me a fan of the Eels for life. Anytime that a new record comes out, I buy it sight unseen. Nothing has ever hit the peaks of this record for me, but it's like when you do an album this good, you just have a dedicated fan for life after that.
I was glad that this list made me listen to this album. I have the lyrics scrolling like as I'm running, so that's why I was paying attention. But if I wasn't paying attention to the lyrics, I don't know that I would have known that it was like the music didn't drag me down through the album. I just thought it was
No, it's weirdly upbeat throughout a large chunk
it was
of it.
interesting and experimental. I think it was just that I was seeing the lyrics as they went, and I'm like, oh, there's something to this. There's a reason why this is on a few people's list.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with 90 through 81 of the THUNDRED after a few words from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
With Amex Platinum, you can really be in the now. Access to Resi Priority Notify. Yes. 4 p.m. checkout with fine hotels and resorts booked through Amex Travel.
We needed this.
And dedicated card member entrances at select events.
Let's go!
Means you can focus on the present moment. That's the powerful backing of American Express. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex. Card member entrance access not limited to Amex Platinum Card.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, you know to check you have the tickets in your wallet first before you drive 2 hours to the big game. Seriously, you had one job. Now the closest you'll get to the 50-yard line is parking lot D. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week starting November 21st.
This episode is brought to you by Vuori. Give the active people in your life something they'll truly appreciate. Performance apparel from Vuori. Whether they're into running, surfing, hiking, or even just casual walks around the block, there's something for everyone. And if you're not sure what to gift them, you can't go wrong with something from Vuori's Dream Knit collection. It's the perfect gift and so comfortable. Get 20% off your first purchase today at Vuori. VUORI.com/Spotify.
The holiday season officially starts when you get that first card in the mail. Shutterfly makes it easy to add more meaning to the everyday with hundreds of holiday card designs that can be personalized in seconds with your favorite photos from this year. Select your greeting, customize the color, and even add little extras like personalized foil to make a holiday card that really shines. Enjoy 40% off with code SMILE40 at Shutterfly.com and send something meaningful this year. See site for more details.
And now, back to the THUNDRED.
All right, so now we're at 90?
At number 90, The Weaker Thans, Left and Leaving.
On this broken fence between past and present tense, and I'm losing all those stupid games that I swore I'd never play, but it almost feels okay.
This was another one. I'm glad that you gave me a heads up on this one because this band's name I've seen a million times. Couldn't even tell you what genre I assumed this band would be. And when I hit play on this record, I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I assumed it was, which was like, in my mind, I was like, okay, this is going to be like some shinzy, like chilled out indie rock. And then we get to the second track, and I was so very wrong on, on what this band was. And I was into this from that point on.
The Weaker Thans, for anyone who doesn't know, it's fronted by John K. Sampson. It's his project. John K. Sampson, I knew because I was a huge Propagandhi fan growing up, which if you don't know Propagandhi, very fast political punk band from Canada. And it was shocking to hear The Weaker Thans after John left Propagandhi and being like, this sounds nothing like Propagandhi. And John is widely known as one of the, if not the best lyricist out there from the whole world of punk rock or indie rock or whatever you want to call it. Just amazing. The imagery, the storytelling, and the music and his voice. He has a very distinctive sort of, I don't know, some people might call it whiny, but I don't mean that in like a derogatory way. It's just, it's very charming and endearing. And something about this project is also very Canadian, and I love it.
Boy, is it. Yeah. There was no album that I listened to that I was upset that I'd listened to. But I liked this quite a bit. I'm definitely going to have to dive deeper into The Weaker Thans from this point on.
Absolutely. This was a on-tour regular CD that we would listen to as well.
Makes sense.
At number 89, Bob Dylan, Blood on the Tracks.
Split up on the docks at night, both agreeing it was best. And she turned around to look at me as I was walking away. I heard her say over my shoulder, we'll meet again someday on the avenue, tangled up in blue.
I've been trying to not ask too many questions related to this particular topic, but I do want to ask here, is this the only Bob Dylan that made it onto the 100?
I'm not spoiling the rest of the list.
Okay, I'm only asking because as a person who is a fan of Bob Dylan, this is a very good Bob Dylan record, but it is not my favorite Bob Dylan record by any stretch of the imagination. It's got some great songs. The first 2 tracks are pretty big songs in the Bob Dylan career. I just feel like this album tends to drag in the center a little bit more than certain other Bob Dylan albums. But I get it. This is an album that's also very regularly on tons of greatest albums of all time lists. So it's not shocking that it's here. It's just never been the Bob Dylan record that spoke most to me.
I noticed that this album was very high. I think at one point on the Rolling Stone list, it was even number 1. I could be mistaken about that.
I'm sure one of these days it was at least in a top 10 many a times.
Yeah. And I saw it. It was on several lists. I don't remember it being high, especially on anybody's list. But I almost felt like every time I saw it, I was like, are you just looking at lists of like what you're supposed to put on a list? I know that's a kind of stupid thing for me to say. I'm sure these people actually love this. I'm not a big Bob Dylan guy. I think Bob Dylan's cool as hell. I like what he sings about, but I guess I'm just not that into folk. And so I'm not big into this, but I know a lot of people are. So I'm cool with it being on the list. It's just not really my thing.
I'm kind of right there with you. Next.
At number 88, Boys to Men 2.
This is obviously the most famous Boys to Men record, right? Like, it's just packed with the hits. But I don't think it's my favorite Boys to Men record. I actually like the debut a little bit more.
Cooley High Harmony.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I had a false memory. When I saw this made the list, I was like, nice. I'm glad Boys to Men are represented. Some great Pennsylvania boys on the list. We love that as Pennsylvania guys. But I had a false memory. I'm like, okay, yeah, of course. End of the Road. Yeah.
Nope.
End of the Road is not on this album.
It's on the Boomerang soundtrack.
I know. That's crazy. I just...
It's the most famous thing to come from the movie Boomerang.
Yeah. I mean, but honestly, if it would have been, if you added End of the Road to I'll Make Love to You and On Bended Knee, and I think Water Runs Dry is on this album.
Yep. And Thank You. Like, there's some bangers on this. Thank You's the worst of the 4 singles for sure, but... I agree with you. You put End of the Road on here. Also, got to give a shout out to it on this record. And I actually, past guest on this podcast, Mark's podcast, Never Mind the Music, they call this out. Boyz II Men's cover of Yesterday on this is one of the most unique covers of any Beatles song.
There's a shadow hanging over me. Oh, yesterday came suddenly. Why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say.
That closes out the album.
Oh,
it ends with that cover of Yesterday.
Dude, that's incredible. Incredible. This should be on the list. I'm glad this is on the list.
I'm glad it's on the list too. Just like I said, I think Boyz II Men had, some back-to-back bangers. I just lean a little bit more to Cooley High Harmony personally.
Okay. Number 87, Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA.
You can't start a fire. You can't start a fire without a spark. This gun's for hire. Even if we're just dancing in the dark.
I'm assuming there's going to be more Bruce on this list. Possibly even another Bruce album with Born at the front of the title. But I mean, this is the most hits heavy Bruce Springsteen record there's ever been. I mean, you've got 7 hit singles off of this. Dancing in the Dark, Cover Me, Born in the USA, I'm on Fire, Glory Days, I'm Going Down, and My Hometown.
Dude.
At least 4 of those 7 are like regular rotation radio songs still. Dude. 40 years later. Like,
honestly, this seems really low for this album.
This is shockingly low.
I think that it might have been a situation where people were like, okay, a lot of people are going to put that. I'm putting more like stuff that I don't think will be on here. Because this seems really low. I'm on Fire is my favorite Bruce Springsteen song.
This is the mainstream big Bruce Springsteen album. But if you asked enough people who are diehard Bruce Springsteen fans, they may have split some of the votes going for like Nebraska or The River or Born to Run. Like, I think that there's enough of those early pre-Born in the USA tracks that if you have enough Bruce Springsteen fans in the conversation, they might not vote for Born in the USA because they want to put more points towards like a slightly deeper cut, and thus it brings Born in the USA lower in the list.
Sure. That's the sellout album.
Yeah. I mean, in my eyes, and I'm sure that there's some Bruce Springsteen fans that would be very upset with me saying this, it's the last truly great Bruce Springsteen record as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to upset Bruce Springsteen fans by saying this. I think it is obviously the best Bruce Springsteen album. Number 86, Queen, A Night at the Opera.
Oh, you're the best friend that I ever had. I've been with you such a long time. You're my sunshine, and I want you to know that my feelings are true. I really love you. Oh, you're my best friend.
As a Queen fan, there are so many Queen options that you can go with. For me, I love Sheer Heart Attack quite a bit. But, I mean, A Night at the Opera, I mean, that is the one, right? It's the one that has Bohemian Rhapsody and You're My Best Friend. So right out the gate, people love that. I believe this has I'm in Love with My Car, which is like not a huge radio single, but definitely a fan favorite. People love that song. One of my favorite things about Queen is that they're not afraid to be weird. And the second track on this song is weird as shit. It's the most Ween-sounding Queen song, which is Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon, which is like a song that just sounds like an old 30s vaudeville song, just plopped early on in the record. So, I mean, this is a really good album. I'm scrolling through the track list right now to remind myself of everything. But
Love of My Life is on this album, which I never thought of Love of My Life as like this beloved Queen song, but then when they made the Bohemian Rhapsody movie, that was like a focal point of the movie, that song. And I think with Queen, I'll say this, there was no Queen album on my list, and I think the reason is because all their great songs are spread out over the albums. It's like, I said no greatest hits. I should have said that at the beginning of this thing. People weren't allowed to put greatest hits, and they weren't allowed to put soundtracks unless it was just one artist. They couldn't put compilations, basically.
Prince could be accepted, but like
no compilations.
The Saturday Night Fever release couldn't.
No, right. That being said, this album has Bohemian Rhapsody on it. So that song alone, I think is worthy of having the album in the top 100. So I'm glad it made it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Queen is one of those interesting bands. I've said this before, where I would say that the Beatles are the most important band in music history, but my vote would be to Queen for the best band in music history. I just think you have so many talented musicians. You've got one of the greatest, if not the greatest frontman in history with Freddie Mercury. And I think Queen did a really great job of balancing writing radio pop hits like You're My Best Friend, but also doing these avant-garde and very musically interesting deep cuts. And like Bohemian Rhapsody is this weird melding of both of those versions of Queen successfully. Yeah. And I think that that's what makes this album so impressive, is that it's kind of the most cohesive blending of like experimental Queen and radio-friendly Queen into a singular record.
Hell yeah. At number 85, Huey Lewis and the News, Sports.
If this is it, please let me know. If this ain't love, you better let
I could have put this higher. I love that. This is like arguably, I mean, if we were doing top 100 albums of just the decade of the 80s, I mean, this is a strong contender for top 10. This is an album filled with nothing but great songs.
Well, I think that a lot of lists, more snobby lists than ours, may have not included Huey Lewis in the News because it's, to a certain extent, kind of fluffy, kind of campy or whatever. But dude, Heart of Rock and Roll, I Want a New Drug, If This Is It, huge radio hits. How could you not love these songs? You put this album on, it's always going to sound good. It always feels good to listen to. It puts you in a good mood. I love that this made our list.
I agree. I mean, If This Is It might be my favorite
Me
Huey
too.
Lewis in the News song.
Me
I
too.
love that song. This is what makes our list kind of interesting and cool, right? Is that a record like this that is kind of universally looked at as a very great record of the 80s actually has a chance to be on this list.
Yeah.
Where it wouldn't on a normal Rolling Stone list.
I wasn't expecting it. I'll say that. When I was tallying it up, I was like, nice.
Yeah.
Sports made the list. I love that. And the fact that a podcast that we're involved in, he came as a guest. I love when a Chris Makes a Podcast guest makes the list. So that's pretty nice too.
I think that's fair.
Number 84, NWA, Straight Outta Compton.
And when I finish, it's gonna be a bloodbath of cops dying in LA. Yo, Dre, I got something to say. Fuck the police. Fuck the police. Fuck the police.
I've said before that this is in the top 10, if not the top 5 most important rap records of all time. There are certain albums where you listen to it, and even though the album is like 30, maybe 40 years old, you're still like, God, this sounds dangerous.
Yeah.
Like the record just feels so raw, which is kind of funny because you have this record that has like the first 2 tracks. You get Straight Outta Compton right into like Fuck the Police, or maybe it's the reverse. It starts with Fuck the Police. Whatever. Those first 2 tracks are like as dangerous as 80s hip hop could possibly sound. But it also has something that's so like goofy and cheesy, like Express Yourself on it.
Yeah.
But like it all works. This album is so cohesively good. Like it captures so much of what NWA was at that time. And this is one of those records that I listen to probably 2-3 times a year. I love this record.
So as groundbreaking and influential of a rap album that this is, Chris DeMakes made this point before, but I'm going to repeat it right now. This is one of the punkest albums ever.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Absolutely punk rock. Certain things, and there's going to be albums along the way, certain things that don't age as well, kind of a product of the time. But in general, the vibe of it and the feeling of it is pretty timeless.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Number 83, They Might Be Giants, Lincoln.
It's like a whirlpool and it never ends. And I are getting old and we still haven't walked in the glow of each other's majestic presence. Listen and hear my words, they're the ones you would think I would say if there was a me for you. All alone.
This one blew my mind.
Shocking.
That this was on the list.
Shocking.
I love They Might Be Giants. And I like this album, Lincoln. This is a good album. But like if Flood isn't on this list, if Apollo 18 isn't on this list, if this is the only They Might Be Giants representation, it is a weird They Might Be Giants record to be the only one on this list.
Dude, I mean, Anna Ang is from this album, which I think is like one of the all-time greatest songs ever. Purple Toupee's on this album. In general, there's a lot of songs on this album, and They Might Be Giants are another band where I really couldn't pick a particular album. I feel like every album has maybe 3 or 4 songs I love, and then a bunch of songs where I'm like, I don't know about that. In general, I love the band. I think the I don't know about that one kind of songs are more just like, hey, they're taking a shot, man. They're going out on a limb.
I was going to say, theoretically, with how much you love Ween, it would only make sense that you would love They Might Be Giants with like a somewhat equal level of just being like, I feel like they are both examples of like a two-piece band that is just doing whatever the fuck with as many different genres and you know, it is. There's those giant swings where you have like Flood is my personal favorite from them, which is kind of like a cliche answer because it's also like the best selling of their albums. But like for as weird and poppy as Birdhouse in Your Soul is, you get a song like Minimum Wage that's presented as like a cowboy TV show theme song. Like it's just like they are just trying random shit. They had that cool dial-a-song concept throughout the 80s and 90s. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that They Might Be Giants is represented anywhere on this list, but I was floored that Lincoln was the one on this list.
I don't want the world. I just want your half. Number 82, TLC, Crazy Sexy Cool.
Control, baby, it's yours. If you want it tonight, I'll give you the red light special all through the night. Baby, it's yours. If you want it tonight, just come through my door, take off my clothes, and turn on the
God damn.
Did you see that
Getting
coming?
Sexy. I did not see TLC because I think that to me, you and I have talked about this. Crazy Sexy Cool to me is like a singles album with some B-sides. Red Light Special, goddamn yeah. Like Waterfalls, Creep, like absolutely. But there aren't that many other tracks on the album where I'm like super into it the way I am the singles.
I mean, I love the singles. I was shocked this one was on here. I will say, I'd have to go back and double check this. I got a lot of women's albums, you know, and I don't remember if any guys put this on their list, but hey, I like the representation here of something from this era that's, you know, from the world of hip hop and R&B and female. You know?
Yeah. No. And I'm not... I almost, in my mind, I would have rather Fan Mail been here. I think that Fan Mail is just a better record. You get No Scrubs and Unpretty on there, which are just two incredible TLC songs. But I think that one has a stronger full tracks. Like I think that like even the non-singles on Fan Mail are really, really, really good. This was not like TLC shouldn't be on here. I'm just surprised. But if it's going to be on here, I think in the like high to mid 80s is the right spot. Like this album shouldn't have been in like the top 20, but I like its placement.
Waterfalls was a huge song, man.
Boy, was it.
And if TLC's going to be on our list, I want it to be the album with Creep and Red Light Special because I think those are the two best TLC songs. So
fair.
I like it. Number 81, REM, Automatic for the People.
If you believe they put a man on the moon, man on the moon. If you believe there's nothing up their sleeve, then nothing is cool.
I'm curious to see if there's more REM on this list or not. They are definitely a band that has a couple albums that are always on these type of like magazine lists. I've said before that I'm a big fan of Monster, which is not one of the albums that's usually on these types of lists. But Automatic for the People, I mean, this is, again, when we're talking about kind of a strong collection of hits. Drive, Man on the Moon, Everybody Hurts, Night Swimming, like those are all incredible songs. Even the Sidewinders Sleeps Tonight and Find the River are like decent enough singles in the catalog. This also has Star Me Kitten, which is a really kind of obscure REM song, but it is a really good, weird song. So I'm really pleasantly pleased for this to even be on here at all.
Yeah, I think at the time I was really annoyed by Everybody Hurts. But now I look back and I'm like, man, that song that probably helped so many people. It was relatable. Michael Stipe's so freaking cool. I think he is anyway.
The melody in Everybody Hurts is awesome because that's one of the ones where the verse is as catchy as the chorus, which is not always the case with a radio hit.
Yeah. I mean, looking back, it's a beautiful song. And Man on the Moon, I think, is my favorite REM song.
See, I would also throw Night Swimming out there as kind of a forgetting song, but that song is gorgeous.
It's
that
amazing.
Piano and oh my God.
Love it.
That like just gives you nostalgia vibes from the first time you heard it. You're just like, oh, I know what this song's about. I fucking love this.
Yeah. Rich themes, haunting melodies. It's a timeless classic that reflects on the complexities of the human experience. And Matt, that's it. That's 100 through 81. How are you feeling about the list so far?
I'm loving our list so far, man. This is the coolest list that you could ever have of this kind.
Yeah. And I think it's so cool that this is just the will of the people. Well, the people that we reached out to.
This is the automatic for the people, Chris.
That's right.
Night swimming deserves a quiet night. I'm not sure all these people understand.
This has been One Hit Thunder. If you enjoyed the show, go leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or better yet, send this episode to a friend you think would enjoy it. There's a One Hit Thunder Facebook group that's a lot of fun if you enjoy joining in on some music conversation with some fellow listeners of the show. We also have an Instagram account at One Hit Thunder Podcast. And if you really love the show and you'd like to help us continue making it, we have a Patreon. It's at patreon.com/OHT podcast. You'll get instant access to a ton of bonus episodes, and you'll get early releases of episodes, and you can vote on what songs we cover on the show, and it just really helps us out a lot. So if you like the show, we'd really appreciate you considering joining the Patreon. Once again, that's patreon.com/OHT podcast. And we'll be back next week with another regular episode of the show, as well as 80 through 61 of the THUNDRED. So we'll talk to you next week, and thanks, as always, for listening.
You I cannot judge. You I thought you knew me. This one laughing quietly underneath my breath. Night swimming.
What makes a song a smash on the charts? Is it talent? Luck? Timing? Well, as chart analyst and pop critic Chris Melanphy would say, it's all that and more. Chris hosts Hit Parade, a podcast from Slate, where he tells tales from more than a half-century of pop chart history. Through storytelling, trivia, and song snippets, he dissects how the artists you love or hate dominated the airwaves and shaped your memories forever. He's explained why Steely Dan is yacht rock and Jimmy Buffett isn't, why girl groups dominated the early 60s and boy bands the late 90s, how the members of disco band Chic wrote a bass line that launched hip-hop, how Taylor Swift pivoted from country to pop, how Sam Cooke invented soul and James Brown invented funk, and what exactly a one-hit wonder is, and whether the band Aha is a one-hit wonder. I think you'd really like it. So for tales of the hits from coast to coast, make sure to follow Hit Parade wherever you get your podcasts.
One Hit Thunder is a podcast where we both celebrate and have a good laugh about bands and artists that had just one hit that we all know. Each week, we're joined by a guest from the world of music or comedy to learn more than you ever thought you would about some songs that you can't forget. And we decide if they brought the One Hit Thunder or were nothing more than a one-hit blunder. Look, if you listen to the show, you're probably going to laugh, and I guarantee you're going to crush next time the bar has music trivia. Tag Team, Jane Child, Meredith Brooks, Looking Glass, Sean Mullins, Eiffel 65, EMF, Crash Test Dummies, Crazy Town, Chumbawamba. We have hundreds of episodes in our back catalog and a new episode each week, so pass the Dutchie, make sure you're connected, and subscribe to One Hit Thunder wherever you get your pods.